criminals are not going to follow the law. That's true with just about any issue, but let's talk about guns just for a moment. Now, I know all of us are on the same page as far as a result. We never want to see innocent people victimized by gun violence ever. Even if we disagree on how that could ever be moved closer towards that happening, because it'll never 100% happen, but we can certainly chip away at the number of gun deaths every year, right? Of course. So we're on the same page, so just know that, because I'm not going to say any of this to put any of you down, as long as your end goal is that we can reduce the number of gun victims in this country. Okay, so having said that, the laws. Why are gun laws so important if criminals aren't going to follow them anyway? Well, let's apply that logic to other laws. It's illegal to kill somebody. So if they removed that law as well, if we applied the same logic to all laws, for anybody using the logic of, well, we shouldn't have gun laws because criminals aren't going to follow the law anyway, then being the consistent person that you are, as an honorable person that you are, look at other things like murder. If somebody kills you, or somebody kills somebody in your family, or somebody kills anybody for no reason, cold blood, it wasn't self-defense, they just felt like doing it for whatever reason, that excuse me, that person cannot be prosecuted for it. Even if we know they did it, they can't be prosecuted for it because it's not against the law. And also, if somebody, we have knowledge of somebody who we reasonably believe is going to kill somebody, we can't do anything about it and prevent it from happening because it's not illegal. So now let's look at any issue, but we'll look at guns right now. And we'll just look at one thing. So I'm not for banning guns, okay? I'm not calling for that at all. Most people aren't. There's very few people that are that extreme. But one thing that most of us agree on is 93% of the entire population in the United States believes in a required, mandatory, universal background check and closing the gun show loophole laws. That's something that should not be a state right. That's something that should be federally mandated, a universal background check for all gun purchases and closing the gun show loophole laws. 93% popularity rating that has, just that one thing alone. That's not saying you can't have a gun. It's not saying you can't defend yourself with a gun and that you can't go hunting and so forth. That's just a reasonable measurement that 93% of the population, including me, believes is something that should be enacted, and we don't have it. Now, let's say that becomes enacted, and I think eventually it will be, I don't know when, sooner than later, but let's say that does become enacted. Take the same logic I just gave you about, the murder example I gave you, just parallel that to this. So we have reason to believe that somebody is going to sell somebody a gun, or they've done it before in the past, or whatever, without the universal background check and going through that protocol, whatever that is. We can go out there and, law enforcement has a tool that they can use to stop those people from selling any more guns illegally. They can also maybe get in contact with some of the people that have purchased those guns and maybe do the proper background check from there, right? And we can, prosecute people after the fact, people that have committed the crime, and also we can hopefully, more importantly, prevent crimes from even happening in the first place. If we have reason to believe that a crime is going to be committed because it's illegal, we can do something about it. So bottom line, the reason why laws are so important, even though criminals obviously are not going to follow the laws are important because it gives police, fire, rescue, first responders, it gives them tools that they should have. So right now there's about 33,000 deaths a year from gun violence. I'm not naive enough to believe we can ever reduce that number to zero, but we can certainly chip away at that 33,000 deaths a year from gun violence. Closing the gun show loophole law, that alone, and the universal background check too, that alone would be enough to start chipping away. And we can talk about other measures too that do not infringe upon people's rights to bear arms. Because I'm not in favor. I mean, if somebody were to say, let's just ban all guns, I'd be fighting against that as hard as I would be for anything else, honestly. So, but I am gonna fight for, we should be more nuanced. It's not all or nothing. very few things is all or nothing, very few. And I love all or nothing kind of, because I'm an intense person. I'm very intense, so I love all or nothing stuff. But most things are not all or nothing. The gun debate is certainly not all or nothing. There has to be some nuances and some balance in between. Like, we can't just let anybody and everybody buy a gun. There should be, and we can't just have states' rights on everything, when especially universal background checks, because some states don't have it, and the gun show loophole laws because some states allow the gun show loophole. No, that has to be that has to be a Supreme Court decision, so it supersedes the states' rights to open up those laws, so that no matter where you are in the United States, you should be required to have a background check to purchase a gun. Conceal and carry, that should have some kind of regulation. I'm not sure what, but at least the debate should be there, instead of anybody can conceal and carry or open and carry. Anybody should be able to carry a sidearm going. No, that's all. That's the all or nothing debate. That's the all part of the all or no. There has to be some measures there. There has to be some kind of regulation there that makes sense. And and I'm not sure what would make sense on everything, and I know that. But we should be having that discussion instead of an all or nothing discussion, because that's ridiculous. Either side, all or nothing, either one of those is completely ridiculous. So we should be a bit more nuanced in our approach, and when talking to each other, we should realize we all want the same end result of fewer gun violence victims. So given that we want that same result, we should be able to talk about it without personally attacking and flying off the handle. And I think the worst thing is when we create these straw man arguments, and basically what that is when we totally misrepresent the other person's point of view. Like, we're in a discussion, an argument, a debate with somebody else who has a different opinion on how to get to that same end result of fewer gun violent victims, and we just completely misrepresent our opponent's viewpoint, and we do it on purpose. A lot of people do that straw man type of tactic. They do it in politics. People do it in their everyday lives, especially on this issue and other issues. But I think we can make some progress here if we stop straw manning each other and realize that we're on the same page in terms of the end result that we want, with fewer people being gun violence victims, and realizing that laws do matter, because it gives police and other first responders, and even our justice system, it gives everyone extra tools to both prevent and also to prosecute when someone does break the law. And that does matter, because we can chip away at that number of 33,000 deaths a year from gun violence. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Again, like the last video I just did a few minutes ago, this is not about me, it's the messaging. I don't want so many people to die from something that can be prevented. So please share this, share the living daylights out of it. And I'll close on this note. The reason why this is an issue that our elected leaders do nothing about when there's a mass shooting. By the way, we have about 400 mass shootings a year. A mass shooting is, involving 4 or more people, victims in one shooting. We have about 400 or more of those every year. So we have more mass shootings than there are days. We have a problem. There's no other country that has that. It's just us. Where was I going with that? I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah. So I'll close on this note. Given the fact we have so many mass shootings here, the reason why we don't have something that has 93% popularity, closing gun show loopholes and requiring universal background checks no matter what state you live in, the reason we don't have that at a 93% approval rating in a democracy is because our politicians, they are bought and paid for. They are bribed. They have a conflict of interest that they do not disclose with us. Have you ever seen a politician, before a debate starts or before they answer a question or whatever, have you ever seen them disclose the fact that they take lots of money from the NRA and major gun manufacturers? Like, somebody asks them a question about what they believe should be done on guns, somebody in politics, and then they proceed with the answer, or non-answer as the case usually is, just obfuscation typically, or dodging and deflecting. But they never disclose. Oh, by the way, I should also not fail to mention that I take a lot of money from the NRA and gun manufacturers, and here's my answer. No, they never say that, because they know they'd be voted out quicker than yesterday. Exactly. Exactly. So whether you agree or disagree, let's be principled about it. If we can't be principled about it, then there's no production that can be had in either agreement or disagreement. So that's why we don't have something that has 93% approval rating. And there's other issues too, like single-payer health care and our trade deals and lots of things that has an overwhelming popular consensus across every cross-stitch of the community in our country that we can't get. And it goes down to the same thing, private money in politics. And the gun issue is a classic prima facie example of private money in politics. The enormous conflict of interest that it creates because it is legalized bribery. Bribery that would be illegal in just about any area of business, except the one area of business where our laws are crafted that affects everything, politics, but somehow it's legal there. So we have to get all that private money out, and I'll just say to that, start looking at candidates, local, state, federal, presidency. Start looking at candidates that reject big donor money outright and are loud about it, because the donor money is drying up. I just did a video about this. It's drying up a lot, which means right now the soil is fertile. It's fertile right now to get money out of politics. A few years ago, next to an impossible battle, but now it's possible. So please be conscious with how you vote. I would recommend, don't even hear what a politician has to say unless you have a printout of their donor list, starting with the biggest donors, maybe their top 10 donors or something like that. Don't even watch a political debate discussion, or even the media, somebody in corporate media interviewing a politician. Don't watch any of that unless you have a printout of that particular politician's biggest donors, from biggest to smallest. Otherwise, you're not going to connect the dots, and you'll think whatever they're talking about is something they actually believe in. Well, no, they don't. They're just doing whatever their donors told them to do. And when you have that donor list, you're going to see, oh yeah, I'm connecting the dots. Everything lines up with what they're saying, what they're doing, and their donors. And a lot of times you're going to find out that, oh, they're saying something, but they voted a different way, so they're giving us lip service. A lot of times they do that. They'll give us lip service, but then their voting record doesn't match their lip service, but their voting record matches their donor list, their biggest donor list. And with guns, classic prima facie example. Politicians are all thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers are great, but when you hear a politician doing it, and that's all they do is thought and prayers, what they're really saying is, we're not going to do anything. So I'm going to distract you with thoughts and prayers because it seems appropriate at a time like this after a mass shooting. So thoughts and prayers, and now is not a time for politics, even though that's where we could totally start to chip away at the freaking gun deaths every year, but somehow now is still not the time. You know, I don't know where I was going with that, but that gives me a headache sometimes to think about that. Now is not the time. Thoughts and prayers, now is not the time for politics, even though we can totally do something about chipping away at that number with politics. So anyway, there you have it. It's because they're on the take and we have to get all private money out of politics. And share this video. It's not me, it's the messaging that is so important. Usually in my videos I'll give my website or something like that because I want people to see more of my stuff, but this is so important. My other videos are important too, but this is not really relevant to my other videos that I typically talk about. It's not relevant, but it's super freaking important for the entire country. So no website, no blah 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 blah. But my name is Tom Birkenmeyer if you want to Google me or something, or look at, find me on social media or Facebook or whatever. But just the messaging, please get this message out there. Create your own video if you want to. Make sure the messaging is on and you're not pushing some political agenda if you're making a video about this, but you're pushing a principled agenda, which is the principle of getting money out of politics so that politicians can be principled, whether they agree or disagree. They can be principled at least if we get the money out. All right, take care everybody. Bye for now. Please share this messaging. It's really important. We need to chip away at that number of 33,000 deaths a year from gun violence. Mwah.